All right, good morning, everybody. Looks like it's about time to start. Quite a few people have jumped on now, so first of all, thanks for your time this morning. My name is Ryan Johnson. I'm with D3 Technologies. So this morning we have about 30 minutes together. We're going to be talking about 3ds Max and basically how 3ds Max can fit into your manufacturing workflows. You know, a lot of people have it available in the product design suite or the new manufacturing collection, but maybe you don't know exactly where it might work for your company. So the goal of this webinar is to answer some of those questions for you. So I'm going to go over basically a brief outline, some foundational material here. And then we're actually going to jump into 3ds Max and see some of the basic workflows live inside of the software. And hopefully this gives you a good idea of what capabilities it can have for you. So we'll mainly be talking about the capabilities and the uses of 3ds Max. First of all, the capabilities. So the basic main thing that 3ds Max is great for is rendering. Now we have a lot of different rendering styles. We have, you know, photorealistic renderings, but we also have a lot of things we can output from 3ds Max for other, you know, other things besides like the marketing and advertising. So a lot of times a company can use some of these other rendering styles to get some great output for internal documentation and things like that as well. So we have photorealistic renderings. We have more technical drawing styles, maybe in ink and paint or a wireframe typed view. That can all be output from 3ds Max. Another one of the main capabilities of 3ds Max is the animation. So this is really where 3ds Max can shine over a lot of the other Autodesk products. Whether you're doing a specific mechanical type motion for your product or even creating things like exploded views or descriptive views or animations that basically show how something functions or how a process works, shows how something is assembled or maybe even maintained. 3ds Max can help with all of those types of areas. So maybe you're thinking 3ds Max is just on the advertising and marketing side, but really there's a lot more things that it can be used for. So that gets us into the uses. First thing that we'll review here is technical documentation. So a lot of companies might use 3ds Max to build internal documentation, maybe assembly instructions or maintenance, or even things that go external to the customer, operating procedures, design reviews, material selection, so even rendering the same model with different optional materials. We can also use 3ds Max, of course, for marketing and advertising, which is where most people think of it and where you'll see it a lot of times. You know, the new commercial for the fancy new computer that was just released, and they have some great looking animation and graphics that go along with it. So for maybe technical overviews or competitive highlights showing why your product is better than the competition's, or even actual advertising and other uses of the software. So just several different examples here of images that have been rendered out of 3ds Max here at D3. Okay, so I'm actually going to jump into 3ds Max and show some of this functionality live for you guys. First of all, we're going to do some foundation. Basically, I'm going to show you the process of the importing of models, adding materials, doing some basic animation. These are not really hard things to do. It's actually a great workflow with the other manufacturing products that Autodesk has. And then we'll also open some completed examples just to show the different renders that are available in some of the finished animation. So let me jump out of Prezi And I'm going to switch over to 3ds Max now. This is 3ds Max 2017. The first thing I want to do is talk about how do we get our data. If you're a manufacturing company, you've probably got 3D models already created in some engineering software. We do have a lot of really powerful modeling tools right inside of 3ds Max, but if you've already got your product, if it's mechanical in nature, it's probably been modeled in something like Inventor or Fusion or SolidWorks or whatever you've done your models in, we can pull them into 3ds Max. So right here in the application menu, we have the import tool. We have a lot of options here. Import is the basic tool that will pull any non-native formats into 3ds Max. So we'll be using that in just a second. Merge will allow you to merge other 3ds Max scenes together. And then we also have some link tools. These are great if your production department is still in the process of designing something. So we can link Revit, FBX, or AutoCAD, DWGs, and DXFs of 3D models. This is a live link to that file. So you can pull it into your scene, start setting up lighting and cameras and other things. And in the meantime, your company's still developing and updating this model. When you open 3ds Max, the scene will be updated automatically for you. So that's great to use if your company's using any of these file formats. I'm just going to do a regular import for the sake of demonstration in here. And so what I've done is I pulled up a step file. Now this was actually modeled in Fusion 360, and all I did was export the file from Fusion into a step file on my local machine. So we're going to go ahead and import it here. By the way, I didn't mention this at the beginning. I forgot. Let me just real quick, if anybody has any questions while we're going through this, in order to get through the material, we're just going to work through right till the end, but I will have a period of time at the end for question and answers. So if you do have any questions, please hold them off till the end, and I'll be glad to pull you online. Okay. So back to my file here. We've just exported this step file from Fusion 360, and I'm going to pull it straight into 3ds Max. Depending on the type of file that you're working with, you're going to see some different import settings. This is the dialog box for the step file. We're just going to do the Y-up. We're going to flatten our hierarchy. And I'll leave these defaults on here for now. In the background, 3ds Max will begin importing that file. All right, so here we go. We see the model pulled into 3ds Max. I prefer to work with 3ds Max using multiple viewports, so I'm just going to switch that really quick. Gives me a view of it from different directions. And here's basically my model. One thing I'm going to do real quick is just group it. Since I chose not to do that during the import, that allows it to be treated as a single object. And then, for example, let's say I need to move it down a little bit. It's not quite on the ground. So importing is pretty straightforward. There we've got the model ready to work with. Now obviously if I do a render right now, this is not going to look very good, so the first thing I need to do is to start throwing some materials and things onto this object. So I'm going to open the material browser, the material editor. It's very easy to assign materials. We basically can just drag and drop them onto the objects that we want to assign, and they acquire that material. We do have a lot of options for setting up custom materials. You can completely customize anything in here, but one of the great things that 3ds Max includes is the Autodesk material library. So we have a huge predefined library of materials available to use. I might mention I pulled this as a step file, which is neutral, so it did not get any materials. If we're importing from Inventor, for example, we are going to get materials automatically translated. And there's several other formats that will also pull in material data. In this case, though, I'm just going to go through and pull a couple materials into my browser. So let's do a good satin metal. And then we'll do some metallic paint. And maybe a plastic. We'll do a black plastic. Okay, so I can very easily just drag and drop to assign materials. I can also select multiple objects and use the assign to object. So I want most of this to be maybe that green color, and then I want a few objects to be the blue color. And then we can also drag and drop where we need to. Having a hard time selecting that. And then we'll drop some of this black plastic onto a couple objects. We also have a lot of bolts and metal pieces, and these all need to have the metallic appearance. I might mention you can also use the browser to select objects. In this case, they're generically named, so that's not going to be very easy to do. But if I pulled in from Inventor or another file type and they were appropriately named, my guess is in Fusion the file is not named correctly, so they just all called body. But I could very easily pick all the screws from the browser as well and assign materials. Just going to do a little test render real quick to see how this is looking. So with the Autodesk Material Library, it's a great starting point. Without having to do a lot of work, I got a good starting point here. I think I need to work on some lighting. I need to adjust the properties of the render a little bit, but we'll get into that next. One other thing that I noticed is that the background is way too black. So a lot of times, even if the model came from Inventor or some other program, we will be adding a little bit of other objects in 3ds Max, for example, a ground plane. So I can just click and real quickly add a ground plane there, and maybe give it a kind of reflective. So again, this is all just kind of foundational. This is the basics of getting your stuff into 3ds Max, where you can start building those really good-looking visualizations for any of those other purposes. The last thing that I want to talk about just in this kind of overview is some basic animation. Animation is very easy to do in 3ds, and it's really powerful. So on this model, I want to animate a few things. First thing I want to do is create a camera from this viewport. So I just use the keyboard shortcut to do that. That means that I can rotate anywhere I want in the model, but I can always return to that camera. Okay, now for actually creating the animation, it's very easy. We have the time slider down here in the track bar. We're going to turn on auto key mode and simply move our objects. So I'm going to slide to frame 30 and move this object out a little bit. And then we're going to move that additionally out. And we've created an animation from frame 0 to 30 for those two objects. Now I'm going to say I also would like this object to move out a little bit later, this wheel. But I don't want it to start. Right now it's going to start at the same time as the rest of them. I can actually just drag these keys around to adjust the animation. So now the wheel animation doesn't start until frame 30, and then it moves out with the rest of them. Okay, then the other thing that I might do is animate the camera view. This is really easy to do as well. All I have to do with my auto key mode is turn to a frame where I want to move it, and then I literally just change the view in my viewport. So let's do something like that. And my view animates at the same time. So really basic, the functionality here, you know, the things that I'm doing, I haven't done anything really overly complicated, and just building a little bit at a time on top of what you've already done, you can produce some really great looking scenes. What I'm going to do is jump to one that I've spent a little bit more time on, the same model. So now that you guys have seen the basic kind of workflows to pulling in the models and how easy it is to do, I want to look at some of the actual output that 3ds Max can create. So I'm going to actually pull up my rendering dialog here. I've got some materials, some appearances already assigned. And we have a variety of renders that we can actually use. I'm going to start with the Autodesk Raytrace renderer. This was new in 2017. This is an awesome render. It's very simple to use. There are not a lot of settings that you need to modify to get great results. First thing I want to do on this one, adjust my camera exposure. Everything's physically based, so it's very easy to do. And we'll just render with those default settings. So I have not customized anything in this. These materials are straight out of the material library. I spent about 10 minutes assigning them. And this is the first rendering I'm going to get. Okay, so the way the Autodesk Raytracer works is it starts kind of fuzzy and then it kind of refines itself, as you guys can see there. I've also added a noise filter at the end that just kind of smooths the image out. So that already looks pretty great. We got good reflections. Nice shadowing. Pretty good for the amount of work that I put in it. I also want to take a look at the Mental Ray render. Mental Ray is one of my favorite. This is very physically accurate. You can get some really great and really realistic looking images out of the Mental Ray render. It is a lot more complicated and can take a lot more to set up, but it is a great option that's included straight out of the box in 3ds Max. So this will take a little bit longer. I'm not going to let the whole thing run, but just so you guys see how it works, it starts with a pass where it basically calculates some indirect lighting and stuff. And then it's going to go through. We see these little buckets. It's rendering small squares on the screen at a time. And when they're fully rendered, the image is perfectly clear. So both of those options are really great for photorealistic type renderings. We also talked about a lot of scenarios where a company might use 3ds Max, maybe for shop floor documentation or something, and you don't really need that full photorealistic quality. In fact, it might take too long for what you need. It's not worth the investment of time to set all that up. So I'm going to hit cancel on that and actually show you guys a few of the Quicksilver renders. These are great for stuff like that. Let's see, I'm going to do, we'll leave the iterations there. So on the Quicksilver render, we have a lot of options. The first few are kind of like what our viewports use. And then we have some other ones down here on the bottom that are really neat. So I'm going to try a colored ink rendering style. And so this starts really rough, but I have several iterations assigned with the default settings on this renderer, so it's actually going to refine itself a little bit. Right, so for a technical documentation kind of thing, this would be a great rendering style, and it's pretty quick. Even for an animation, we could animate using this renderer as well. There's another one called Tech that's very similar, but it's a little clearer, not as much shading. So this one's pretty cool for technical documentation kind of things. And then we have a few in here like the, let's just do a graphite, which are literally like a drawing style render. But we can use this to produce animations and everything, so it's pretty cool. Then we also have just the regular hidden line or wireframe that are just like our viewport would use. So a lot of different options for the rendering there. I have added a little bit of animation on this, so kind of where I started on that last file, I actually finished this one out. We rotate around and then I start disassembling part of this. So, you know, this is a great tool for maybe disassembly or assembly instructions or some sort of maintenance procedure. It was very quick and easy to create this in 3ds Max, and then using some of those, you know, lower quality, less realistic rendering styles, I could get really quick animations built off of that. Let me pull open one more file. The let's pull this one open. So this is one I'm kind of working on. This is really not a physical product, but it's an animation for the D3 logo. Right. So again, I'm just taking, this is actually, I modeled in Fusion, and then I pulled into here and started animating the pieces. So you can do it for some fun stuff like that as well, besides just product rendering. Here's another scene with some great animation built into it. This one is interesting. It's got several sub-levels. If we open the browser here, we see that we've gotten assemblies and sub-assemblies directly from Inventor in this case. And they're all animated. So we have the tricopter start hovering right here, and then the rotors turn forward and it starts flying. So the same steps that you saw me take at the beginning, those were just, you know, same things used here. I did a little bit of animation, I did a little bit of materials creation. We actually created several cameras. Sometimes it's helpful to see what the motion looks like from other points of view. This one is a crash cam. And then we also have, once you've created an animation, I like to use the play button over here. It actually plays it at whatever your frame rate is for the animation, so you can see what the actual speed will be when it's played back and fully rendered. I've also rendered several models here. I'm going to actually open one of them. Let's go to, just to show you what the final output will look like. And this is an exploded view type render. So as this is opening, you can see the image quality is really good on this. We got some, you know, textures on our materials. We have a lot of details, a lot of things happening at once. I had the idea to start processing this when the Microsoft, the new Surface computer commercial came out, where it kind of exploded and the pieces were flying all over, and then Apple's new MacBook Pro commercial came out the next day, and it had the same type of thing where stuff's just, opening up and you're seeing all the pieces. So it could be very good for both for advertising and for describing, how a product works or how it's put together. Once we've loaded it into this RAM player, we can actually just scrub back and forth through the animation. So if you need to see exactly how something's happening, you can kind of fine-tune. Well, I like this, but maybe I notice here that the lenses are out of frame and I want them to be more in focus. We can also play it. We could output straight to video from there. So again, there's a lot of different directions you could be going with this. Let me go back to my presentation. We talked about the capabilities. We talked about all the different types of animation you can create, different types of rendering, and the uses. Right? Maybe you're not just talking about marketing and advertising. Maybe you're talking about technical documentation or operating instructions or anything like that. There's a lot of great things that you can produce using 3ds Max in conjunction with all your other Autodesk software in the design suite or the manufacturing collection. So of course, that's great that we have all those tools, but we need to be able to use them. We do offer a lot of training classes and support for all these tools. So if you guys would like any further information, feel free to reach out to me or to go to our website, and we're here to help. So that's all I have on the presentation. I see there's a question or two. If anybody has any questions they would like me to answer, feel free to write it into the questions panel in the webinar. Also, feel free to shoot me an email directly if you'd like me to follow up with you offline. Thanks, Kevin. All right. And if there are no questions, thanks for your time this morning, and hope you guys have a great day, and good luck with 3ds Max in your workflows.